Evan moved away with his family right after high school. They ended up in this extremely rural town in northern Wisconsin, the kind of place where the roads have more deer than cars and people wave even if they don't know you. Evan's family was always very country. Honestly, I'd even call them a little backwoods. Not in a bad way, just loud, stubborn, outdoorsy, and proud of it. So when he moved somewhere remote, none of us were surprised. The weird part was how much they liked me. Every time I visited, his parents treated me like I belonged there. His dad would clap me on the shoulder and ask if I'd eaten yet. His mom would load the kitchen with food. His little sister used to follow us around asking questions like I was a celebrity. I was always welcome. Now we were both 19. I was in college. Evan stayed home and worked for his dad, mostly labor, repairs, and property work. His family owned a huge stretch of land out there. Woods, open field, old equipment, trails, and a long gravel drive that connected everything to the main road. I'd been there before, so when Evan invited me for a fall weekend, I didn't hesitate. It was mid-October. He told me his mom and sister were out of town visiting relatives and it would just be him and his dad that weekend. I left late morning and drove a little over 4 hours. The last stretch of the drive was nothing but farmland, flat fields, distant tree lines, small barns, broken fences, wind moving through rows of crops. To reach their place, you turn off the main road onto this gravel cut-through that runs straight into the property for a few hundred feet. When I pulled in, Evan and his dad were already outside behind the house, sitting in lawn chairs in the yard with beers. They stood up smiling like they'd been waiting all day. I got the full welcoming routine, a handshake from his dad, a half hug from Evan, the usual jokes about how long it had been. I dragged my bag inside, dropped it by the couch, then came back out. We sat in the yard talking and drinking beer like we hadn't missed a day. Evan started telling me about these trails out in the area. He said some of them were perfect for off-roading, especially with my SUV. I told him I'd never gone off-roading before. He laughed and said that was going to change. Before we did anything, his dad grilled burgers. We sat there eating like animals, just talking and stuffing our faces. Then his dad said he was heading to a buddy's place for the evening. He told us not to do anything stupid, but the way he smiled when he said it made it clear he already knew we would. After he left, Evan and I got into my SUV and headed out. He guided me down a dirt road that cut into the trees. It was around 5:30 in the evening, not fully dark yet, but the light was already getting lower. We drove trails for about an hour. Some of it was pretty mild, just dirt paths, bumps, and ruts. But there were places where the trail got narrow and uneven, and my whole vehicle tilted and rocked. Evan was having the time of his life. I was too, honestly, even though it was new to me. But as the trees got thicker, the shadows got heavier, and it got darker faster inside the woods than it did out in the open. Eventually, Evan told me we should head back while we still had visibility. So we left the trails and got back onto the road. We drove past farmland again. Quiet roads, no streetlights, no traffic. And that's when we saw it, off to the side, sitting back from the road, was a building that looked like an abandoned church. It wasn't huge, but it had those tall, arched windows that immediately made it feel like a chapel. Next to it was a massive cornfield. The corn was tall and dense, and it ran right up to the edge of the property like it had swallowed half the land. Evan said he passed that building all the time, but he'd never gone up to it. I could tell just by how he said it that he was already thinking what I was thinking. Later tonight, he said. I laughed. Of course. We went back to his house as it got dark. Evan grabbed a backpack and threw in a bottle of tequila, a mixer, and a couple flashlights. Then he took me into the garage. His family had a ridiculous number of mountain bikes, like a whole fleet. He picked two of the best ones. Both had night riding lights mounted on the handlebars. He said the ride there would take about 20 minutes. We were both athletic and always into working out, so neither of us cared about the distance. We took off down the road on bikes, cold air in our faces, gravel crunching under the tires. It felt like one of those stupid adventures you don't think twice about when you're young. We reached the abandoned chapel and stopped. It was fully dark by then. The building looked worse up close. The grass was overgrown, the yard was uneven, and everything around it looked neglected. It felt like the place had been forgotten by the world on purpose. We waited and listened. No cars, no voices, nothing. So we crossed into the property. We rode the bikes into the cornfield a little bit and hid them between the stalks. We didn't want them visible from the road. There was just enough dim light in the sky to navigate without using flashlights yet, and we didn't want to draw attention. The plan was simple. We thought it would be cool to get some gritty photos inside for social media. Abandoned building, creepy atmosphere, dramatic lighting, dumb teenager logic. We walked up to the chapel. From the outside, there was no doubt it had once been a church. The window shapes confirmed it. We went to one of the windows and tried to look inside, but it was too dark. You couldn't see anything. I told Evan to hand me the flashlight. When I turned it on and shined it through the glass, the beam cut through the darkness like a blade. Suddenly, we could see part of the inside, and we both froze. There were pews inside, and in one of the pews was what looked like a person, a head, a hunched shape sitting down like they were praying. But they weren't moving, not even slightly. Evan whispered that it was probably a mannequin. He said it so confidently I almost believed him, but I wasn't convinced. I said it looked like a person, a real one. We made a quick, stupid bet. He bet it was a mannequin. I bet it was a drunk squatter or homeless guy. Then we went to the front door. It was boarded up. Evan grabbed the handle and shook it just to see if it would move. It didn't, not even a little. Evan grinned at me like that proved his point. He said there was no way a person could get inside if the entrance was sealed. I didn't argue. Instead, I said we should check another window, closer angle. So we walked along the building toward the side window with the best view. I lifted the flashlight and shined it through again. The pew was empty. The hunched figure was gone. I stared for a second, confused. Then I said, Evan owed me money. He didn't laugh. He just stared into the window and whispered, "Where did it go?" I started sweeping the flashlight beam around the inside, back and forth, left to right. Then, at the exact same moment, we both saw it. A man was standing directly to the left of the window on the inside, just standing there in the dark, watching us. He wasn't hunched anymore. He was upright, like he'd been waiting for us to notice. And for some reason, even through the glass and the shadows, I could tell he wasn't confused or scared. He was calm. It didn't look like a drunk homeless guy. It looked like someone who didn't belong there at all. Evan and I backed away like we'd been burned. Then we ran, straight for the cornfield, straight for the bikes. But when we hit the corn, everything became chaos. Corn stalks everywhere, no visibility, no direction. We tried to locate where we'd hidden them, but panic makes you stupid. And it was too dark to search calmly. We refused to turn on the flashlights. The last thing we wanted was to shine a beacon showing exactly where we were. Then we heard a loud slam from the building, like a door opening or breaking. Evan grabbed my arm and pulled me down. He whispered for me to shut up. That's when we heard it, movement in the corn, the sound of stalks getting pushed aside. Slow at first, then it stopped, and everything went silent. No wind. No insects, just dead stillness. The corn froze in place. Evan and I crouched there, not breathing, not moving. It felt like minutes. It was probably only seconds, but time stretches when you're terrified, Evan whispered, barely audible. Which direction did we leave the bikes? And right after he said that, the corn shifted again, only this time it was close. Very close. We heard it clearly. Someone running through the corn, coming straight at us. I didn't think. I just yelled, "Go!" And we bolted. We crashed through stalks, leaves snapping against our faces, corn whipping us like cables. I felt something hit my cheek so hard it stung. We didn't stop. We didn't look back. We just sprinted until we broke out of the cornfield and hit open ground, then we ran for the road. By the time we reached the road, the chase noise had stopped. We kept running anyway. We didn't stop until we were far enough away that the chapel was just a dark shape behind us. Evan pulled out his phone with shaking hands and called his dad. His dad answered immediately. Evan was trying to explain and barely making sense. His dad said to stay where we were and not move. Less than 15 minutes later, his dad's truck came down the road and stopped hard next to us. We climbed in like we just escaped something. His dad wasn't angry at us for trespassing. He wasn't even angry about the alcohol. He was angry about the bikes. But then he looked at our faces and he stopped talking. He told us we did the right thing leaving them behind because bikes weren't worth dying over. The next morning, his dad drove us back there. He brought a gun with him. That alone told me how seriously he was taking it. We walked into the cornfield in daylight and searched until we found the bikes. They were a little deeper than we remembered. We pulled them out and loaded them into the truck bed. We were about to leave when I looked back at the chapel. There was someone standing at one of the windows watching us. Even in daylight, it gave me that same cold feeling in my chest. It had to be the same man.